Well, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to WeatherBrains episode number 705. This is the pre-show for July 22nd, 2019. And here you can see what the message is. If you can read that. We get the cable out of the way here. Hangouts over the air, going away August 1st. So we will not be using this platform much longer. I guess technically we can use it for one more week, but we probably better figure something out next week. So, Bill, we got to figure out a platform, man.
Is this the last week?
We have one more week, but a lot of people have sent in, many of our listeners, the greatest producers in the world, have sent in many suggestions. Probably, everybody says Zoom, which is cool. I mean, Zoom is widely used. They had a little issue with installing a server on Macs that they didn't really announce, but that's been fixed. But the problem with Zoom, you have to install software, and that opens up just
Oh yeah, that will be a problem.
So there is a platform that a lot of people have recommended called StreamYard.com, a browser-based live studio for professionals, which probably makes no sense for us in that we're not in that category, but maybe we can use it anyway. So it's browser-based, and looks like I have control of, who's full screen and who's not. And the only thing, it looks like the developer, it's maybe one guy. And sometimes when it's one guy, if he takes a vacation or decides he's tired of it, then it just kind of goes away. But that's what Google does. So,
yeah. Oh boy.
So just if you get a minute in the next few days, look at StreamYard.com. And apparently you can stream it directly to Facebag or YouTube. I guess we can stream it to the WeatherBrains Facebook page, since we've never done that before. And I think you can do that with both here.
That'll make Kevin happy.
Oh, yeah. His head will explode. So, but again, for people, and again, if you're watching this won't affect you. This is just for us. This will still be on YouTube, like always, same channel, same time. It's an internal issue that we're dealing with. We've been using Hangouts over the air since day one of our video. And I want to say it's been maybe 6 or 7 years. It's been a long time. And the reason we went to that is that my boss requested that we port this over to video so he could air this on our digital weather channels here that go to, it's over the air, goes to cable systems around the States. So that's the genesis of this. And most people listen, again, about 3 and 4 listen, 1 and 4 watch. All right, let me try this invite directly, and let's see if this will work here.
I sent it by email. I guess I should have sent it to all the panelists.
But anyway, Monday, and just for logistical purposes, we're going to try and do next Monday, maybe early. Aubrey, if you can go early, like 8 Eastern.
Yeah, I can do that.
I am not working television next Monday night, and we have one of those early flights, and I'll be a weenie like Brian Peters used to be. And we can go early since I'm not having to deal with television. So we're going to try and go at 8 Eastern, 7 Central next week. And we might just try that new platform since I've got some extra time to fool with it. So, but anyway, it's called StreamYard.com, and we will tinker with that maybe next week, because again, it doesn't matter. Google Hangouts are gone. One more week, done, over,
That's crazy.
out.
Sad.
So, and again, it's Hangouts over the air, and they've got a variation of this for their enterprise users. But for, standard Joe Blows like us, no. So, but you look at all the products that Google has pulled over the years. We talked about this before. Google Reader was an amazing RSS reader product for news feeds, and they pulled that. They had a product called Google Wave, which was really interesting. And about the time I got into it, they pulled it. So, and you look at their, I don't think they know how to do messaging, because they got what, Allo and Hello and goodness. I've got so many messaging apps on here from Google. I don't even know what the main one is anymore. And if they just kill it, they decide they don't like it and it's gone. So that's going to make it hard for users to latch on to some service with Google. I figure maybe Gmail is going to go away one day, or Docs or spreadsheets, all the stuff we use here. So
better not.
I don't know.
No, they didn't. That would be very bad. All right, let's see. Let me make sure next week's guest can move successfully. I would think so. We've moved him around 1,000 times. So what's one more hour and a half?
Oh, I like Troy's pick. Oh, this is fun.
Oh, man, I haven't seen Troy's pick.
Oh, it's a good one.
Oh, it's a time suck, isn't it?
It's a time suck,
boy.
yep.
Oh, boy.
Ooh. Tornado warning.
Uh-oh.
Not in my area. Another one for Frederick, Maryland.
Wow. Hasn't popped up on my GR Earth yet.
They had same line. All right, this is more north than it was earlier.
Kim, how are you?
Ooh.
I'm doing really well. Looking up the warning is that there? Sorry, how are you guys doing?
There's a TVS there.
We're all going to the radar up there to see what's happening.
radar, LWX. Pull it up.
Yeah.
Frederick is a pretty
Yeah.
populated area, so this is interesting.
That's in the D.C. or Baltimore market. Aubrey, which one is it?
Yeah, it would be
Washington or Baltimore.
Probably be D.C. I would think it would be D.C.
Yeah, there's the warning. It just popped up. That's a good-looking storm right there. Wow.
What was interesting from the one earlier today is the couplet wasn't showing on Sterling's radar, and in the chat they said we're picking up on the signature on the Baltimore terminal Doppler. And if you compared the two, you couldn't see anything on Sterling, but when you pulled up BWI's terminal Doppler, there it was, and there was the TVS, and it was interesting.
So that's what we're looking at this evening.
Wow. And
that is pretty good looking storm. It's northeast of Frederick. Expand that out, and you can see Baltimore and Washington south of there.
Gosh, wow. That is one of those.
So here's the question. Of course, the first thing in my mind, who is going to have to interrupt the Bachelorette for this? Oh boy, it's Monday night, and I think it's like the finale or something. I do not watch this. I glance at it because it's always on this monitor in front of me here. But if it's WJLA in Washington, Bill is my buddy. Bill worked in Columbus, Ohio for a long time, and he was promoted in as the chief meteorologist there. And just makes me nervous. I mean, I feel for him. Let me. I can immediately go to the WJLA Facebook page and find out real quick if it's them.
Let's see. I pulled up. USA 9, but I'm not hearing anything.
I could our corporate system, I think, allows you to see any live stream internally, but they should have it post. They should be live everywhere.
We may be doing this for the entire show if our two guests don't show up.
Let's just do some play-by-play and talk about tornado coverage and the haters. And
maybe we can go through our whole shtick tonight with one tornado warning storm in northern Maryland. Don't have to worry about interrupting any TV shows or anything.
Right? Everyone can just come to us. They'll get all the details.
Now, the one thing about JLA, they do have News Channel 8.
Mm-hmm.
And they might take it over there, which still I would not do. I mean, I would appreciate that outlet as an extension of, being able to push the warning, but I would still want it on the big channel if there's a tornado warning in the DMA. But the question is that a Baltimore or DC TV market?
Let's see. Fox 5 is on. There's Sue. I can hear Sue.
Yeah, I'm gonna go to the WJLA Facebook page.
Write something nasty on there, James.
Choice, yeah. Hey, you!
How come you aren't on TV?
I want to watch The Bachelorette, I don't even know if it's The Bachelor or The Bachelorette. I have no idea.
I dare you, James. I dare you.
I have a message for you too, James. I need to pass along before the TV comes on.
Okay.
Some lady named Betty called today from Jasper and wants to know why Pam Huff gets all up in your face when you're trying to give the weather.
Wow. She called you?
Yeah. I don't know how she got my number, but she said to tell you that that Pam doesn't know anything about meteorology and she needs to stay out of your face, that people in Jasper are talking about it.
Wow. Wow.
I invited her to be on the show tonight, but she
I think she needs to come on the show.
Go, Bill. You should have done that. Yes.
I was like,
So it must be Baltimore because I think that was just a cut-in.
Yeah, I don't see any hate coming on JLA's Facebook page, so I'm pretty sure. I guarantee you they're not doing wall-to-wall coverage.
Doesn't that say a lot about where we are in 2019? That we're sitting here at WeatherBrains, we're looking for hate tonight. We want hate. We gotta find hate.
Well, we got Natalie.
Okay.
Well, actually, there is plenty of hate on their page, but it's not related to this tornado warning. I don't even want to get into it.
Run. Save your lives.
Run while you can. Now's your last chance. And we got to welcome our television viewers here. Let me stop this. Welcome to those watching on the TV side. It is 31 after the hour. And we're about to start WeatherBrains. I think our guests are all here, Bill.
They showed up. That's perfect.
Yeah, I finally got here. So.
Hey, Natalie. Hey, Victoria. Can you hear us? Good. All right. Yeah, we got a whole crew now. Excellent.
And Natalie just hung up on us. So she's that shows she's smart. She saw what this is about and she ran.
She follows directions. Troy said, "Run while you can."
As fast as possible. She exited stage right.
She's a Holly scholar. She knew when to get out.
Yeah, boy, she saw this mess. All right, so let's roll this thing here. Let's start recorder number 1 and recorder number 2. And here we go in 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. It's WeatherBrains. This is the weekly show all about weather. This is episode number 705 for the 22nd of July. Who's typing? Man, we got somebody urgently typing here.
That's me. I was trying to tweet and bring the people in, bring the kids in.
We need that promotion. That's good. That's good. No, welcome to WeatherBrains. This is the weekly show all about weather, and this is probably going to be our last week using this video platform. And we know most of you listen, and all of this has nothing to do with you. We'll still be on YouTube if you watch, but this platform, Hangouts over the Air, is dead. It's done. Google is pulling the plug. So we might experiment with a new platform next Monday. So that'll be a real fun show to watch on the video side. But welcome. We're glad you're here. And I am excited. Aubrey, I'm about to get on the tweeter as well. So how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
We got a tornado warning close to you.
We do. Another one. There was 2 earlier in Frederick, Maryland, and this one is just to the north of Frederick, kind of right near the Mason-Dixon. The good old Mason-Dixon. So yeah, we've had a couple of storms. No, not really any storms in my area today, but just some pockets of heavy rain, and with that front coming in and enough low-level shear, and sometimes here you can get a little spin, and looks like we've got another one just north of Fredericksburg.
Yeah,
or Frederick, Maryland. Excuse me.
There you go. So very interesting. Active night for those of you in the Middle Atlantic coastal region. Let's see. Let me stop this. Yeah, well, if you weren't watching the pre-show, we were trying to figure out who just cut off The Bachelor. the Bachelorette,
America's favorite game show.
Because this is Monday night, and somewhere some poor soul that works for an ABC affiliate is cut off The Bachelorette to go wall to wall with tornado warning coverage. Forget the fact that that's a life-threatening storm. He will be inundated with hate, anger, and rage. The trolls, haters, and know-it-alls will be all over this person. So whether it's Washington or Baltimore, we don't know. But anyway, that's anytime I see a tornado warning on a Monday night, that's the first thing I think of. So, Troy, have you ever had a hater after cutting off a program in your career? Anybody really mad at you?
I got somebody on this panel that probably hates me.
That's
wow.
not possible.
Wow.
No. Of course. I mean, James, the only reason that we survive as long as we do or did, in my case, you realize that you're not going to be able to please everybody. And so let's just get over it. And I'll also tell you my other opinion as well. If you think I've offended you, that's usually your problem, not mine. So that's the way I deal with life.
Okay. I just see somebody tweeting, I miss Span and his suspenders, and I'm trying to look this. That warms my heart, but it looks like it is WJLA, and that is Bill Kelly. So poor old. Now the question is Bill live on News Channel 8, which is their
tweeting live?
Yeah, the 24/7 news, cable outlet there, or is he on the ABC channel? And Bill is a great guy. Bill took over as chief meteorologist there, I want to say maybe sometime last year, but he came from Columbus, Ohio, and I've gotten to know him, and he's a great guy. And he's having to step in. This is a time when you've got some of the legends that have retired, like Bob Ryan. Yep. And that's a tough weather market, Troy, and yep. Anybody that's aware of what happens is there, especially in wintertime with the nor'easters and the challenge of trying to determine, rain, freezing rain and snow. And it's a challenge. It is a very challenging market, but I think he's done a great job up there. So Kim is in Norman, Oklahoma, where the weather is calm this evening. Has the front come through?
It has. We were only in the 80s today, and it was magical. Yes, it was so cool outside. I had this advertisement come through on Facebook this weekend from some retailer that said, "Isn't it always sweater weather? Is it just us, or is it always sweater weather?"
Wow.
In Iceland, maybe.
It was great. It was over 100 degrees outside, and I said, no, it's not always sweater weather. It is not. But today, when it was only in the 80s,
weather,
I could conceive of putting a sweater back on. I could see it. It could happen again.
That's funny.
So we're expecting dew points to maybe drop into the 50s down here for a brief time by Wednesday and Thursday, which is remarkable for the southern states down here, the deep south. Aubrey, I guess you'll feel a breath of fresh air too there, huh?
Oh, we will, James. We will. Yeah. And we're excited about it. But I actually got to escape some of the worst of the heat. We went to the Finger Lakes on Wednesday, So it actually was not that bad at Seneca Lake during the extreme heat safety tips, wear light color clothing outbreak during the last couple of days. So it really was, Saturday was a little rough at a wedding when you get shoved in a tent with high humidity and a lot of people and lack of fans. But otherwise, I actually kind of missed out on a lot of the heat. So we're just kind of looking forward to the drop in the dew points and lows in the mid 50s. That'll be nice.
Troy, the question is, does the front drop as far south as you?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I'm sitting here looking at GR level with the obs on it, and the front is north of Austin a little bit tonight. Our dew points have been close to 70 to 72 during the day, but James, I'm looking off the northwest now with dew points in the 50s to lower 60s. So it's out there, and it's even pressing. We're probably going to go for the coolest probably around here Wednesday night, mid and upper 60s, which will approach records at both Austin Bergstrom and Austin Camp Mabry, both of our first order reporting climate sites. So
awesome. Well, more about this later. Bill Murray, let's bring in our guest. I'm excited about this show. It's going to be fun this week.
And the dew point in Norman is 57 degrees right now.
Yeah, that's amazing.
That's not too bad, Kim. So Aubrey L wants to know, are you wearing your jewelry tonight in honor of our guests?
Oh, am I? Wait.
Just to check and see what she had on, but no. Okay, well, I guess not.
I've got my lightning earrings on.
Oh, there you go. Well, anyway, your turquoise looks very appropriate tonight. So,
thank you,
James. Did you hear the one about the Native American chief and the National Weather Service?
Uh-oh.
Oh, geez.
Oh, boy. It's
Where are we going?
Bill Murray.
This might not
happens here. I've got nothing to do with it. I'm the guy apologizing. When this goes to HR, I apologize to everybody. I'm sorry.
Might not only be our last week on Google Hangouts, it might be my last week on the show.
Yeah, Bill's done. He's already toast.
Yeah, I'll forgo that then. But seriously, Native Americans have always had a special relationship with nature, including the ability to read signs of the sky. And tonight's guest, WeatherBrains, found a way to bridge the culture gap with the Navajo Nation in Arizona and bring important life-saving information to that community. Tonight's guest, WeatherBrain, is the Administrative Support Assistant at the National Weather Service in Flagstaff, Belmont. They serve all of northern Arizona. She has a background in geology and geography. Victoria Allen, welcome to WeatherBrains.
Thanks. Great to be here.
Well, it is awesome to see you. I see you're at the Weather Service, and you got your setup in the back there, and you guys are ready to be broadcasting from the office in the future, aren't you?
We're working on it. Yep, we're almost there.
That's exciting. So we're excited to have you tonight with us, and looking forward to the presentation. Tonight's second guest, WeatherBrain, was a Noah Holling Scholar in the class of 2016. She's a graduate of the University of North Carolina, Wilmington. Her degree is in marine biology and in French. She'll be leaving soon to be a graduate student in Scotland. Natalie Panasiak, welcome to the show, Natalie.
Yeah, hi. Thanks for having me.
Well, we were worried you guys weren't going to make it there for a minute, and you guys were two of the easiest tests I've ever had, and it always works that way. When the test goes well, the actual show, becomes difficult, but we're certainly glad that you made it for sure. So, ladies, I first heard about the project in the form of a poster at the National Weather Association meeting in St. Louis last week. Why don't one of you, maybe Victoria, you start, tell us about the project.
This poster by chance?
I grabbed, I think you said you distributed about 2,500 of those, and I think I brought probably about 0.1% of them back to Birmingham with me. It was so cool.
That's great. Sure, I'll start out. This is a 11 by 17 poster that we produced in our office. Yes, paper is still something relevant, especially in rural places. And so we made a poster that highlights some of the cultural elements of Navajo Nation and their look at weather. And I will do that one sentence summary, and then I'll pass it off to Natalie, because Natalie is the one that actually researched, designed, met with individuals, got community buy-in, and got Weather Service buy-in to bring the cultural side of things to the science side of things as well. So you want me to keep holding this, Natalie?
Yeah, sure. That works perfectly. Yeah, so like Victoria said, this was actually my Noah Hollings project. And I had 10 weeks to come up with an idea for a weather outreach document as my project and then present it later on at the NOAA Education Symposium at the end of our internships. And I remember on the first day that I actually showed up to the office in Flagstaff, Victoria, she actually pulled me aside and was like, hey, you're going to make a weather outreach document. We don't know what it's going to look like right now, and you don't know what it's going to look like, but they told me that they'd be here to support me every step of the way. And that's something that I really appreciate the Flagstaff office for as a whole, just because creating something that is so scientific, but also culturally sensitive, it does take a lot of collaboration and effort and some creativity as well. So it was really awesome that I had an entire office supporting me.
So now neither one of you is technically a meteorologist. So this is really a story about hidden talents. So Victoria, take a stab at what you mean by that.
Sure. I'm going to tell the story of how this even idea came to be, which is that Flagstaff has a immersion school, and I think like many places, immersion schools teach Spanish, as our local one does here, or at least many schools in Arizona. Our local immersion school also has a Navajo curriculum track. And our WCM, the outreach guy in our office, was going to do a school talk at the immersion school. And I said, we have the English cloud chart. I didn't bring it in here with me, but many of you have probably seen it. It also exists in Spanish and French. And I said, don't forget the Spanish cloud charts to bring them with you. And he said, well, what I really need is a Navajo cloud chart. And a couple days later, the Hollings Scholar Project announcement came out, and I was procrastinating from doing something administrative for my job. And I typed up a proposal and I sent it to the WCM. And arguably it was a good thing, but he submitted it without even telling me, and submitted the proposal to get the intern. And that's how we got Natalie, and the rest is history.
Well, that is truly incredible. So Victoria, you're obviously not a meteorologist per se. Talk about your job and what your background was that got you to the National Weather Service.
For sure, and I hope you give Natalie a chance to talk about it.
Oh, yeah, she's up next. Don't worry. She's next in the batting order here.
Yeah, you're going to get me off the hook.
So I have an undergraduate degree from Dartmouth College in two fields. I was a double major in earth sciences and geography. So I don't meet every qualification to be a meteorologist. I have not taken differential equations, and some of that, I have not taken advanced physics classes either, but I do have a good basic knowledge of Earth systems, and I very humbly respect the way that you all
please
see what's happening in the sky without there being any visual indicators.
You're sweet to say that, but I think you're pretty darn close already. So,
but I have like a fringe meteorology background, I guess you could call it.
Yeah, you got Earth sciences degree.
Oh, for sure, yeah. And then I wound up. My first job was with the National Park Service as a government employee. So my job as an educational park ranger was to learn how to translate complex subject matters and research into something accessible in a 15 or 30-minute program for the general public. So the goal was to know a lot and say a part of that, and then know enough to be able to answer questions, and also know when you don't know. And so that's made my position here at the National Weather Service one that includes outreach. So when my boss found me doing admin for the National Park Service and said, oh, you can also do outreach, he said, great, I want to hire you. So that's how I came into the position. I work at an office that really supports an admin person doing outreach as well.
That's
and then
exciting.
I like paperwork. Sorry.
You like paperwork? That's good. Somebody's got to do it.
That's why I do admin.
So you were at Grand Canyon, right?
Correct. I worked at Grand Canyon National Park. I actually didn't do education there. My most famous park that I worked at was Arches National Park.
Wow. So those are beautiful places, both of them.
For sure.
So, Natalie, you have a degree in marine biology with a second degree in French, or a concentration, or what? That's a unique combination.
Yeah, I hear that a lot, actually. Yeah, everyone kind of tells me that they think I should be the next Jacques Cousteau, and I tell them no. But
that is exactly what I thought.
Yeah, it's like
that's where that's going.
Yeah, but no, I did double major, so I have a bachelor's of science in marine biology and then a bachelor of arts in French, and that combination was really kind of, I couldn't imagine really majoring in anything but those two subjects. I had always spoken French growing up, living close to the border with Canada. I heard French a lot. And then the natural sciences was always something that I had an interest in. And kind of my journey to the NOAA Hauling Scholarship Program and the National Weather Service was that during one of my first year classes in marine biology, one of the professors was talking about this program that NOAA offers to second year undergraduate students, where you send in an application, there's an essay, and if you get it, then you also get an internship and then some funding. And when my second year came around, I applied for it and I got it. So.
Well, Troy, and I want to come to you just a second, but so when you applied, did you expect, Victoria, that you were going to be in a marine sciences capacity with NOAA?
Oh, me?
Yeah, sorry, I want to come back to Troy in a second, but I wanted to ask you that one more question while we were on the hauling scholar situation.
Yeah, it was.
So you thought you were going to land in a marine fisheries environment or somewhere like that?
That's completely what I expected. What's really cool for their internship selection is you can choose from this big list. And originally I thought I was going to go on a cruise looking at corals. And then I saw the Navajo project and it just sort of clicked. And I knew that I would regret it if I didn't apply to be that intern.
So this wasn't a situation like where you applied to be in the NFL draft and an NBA team drafted you. This was more your choice than it appears on face value.
Yeah, it was definitely a little bit of a split-second decision, but it was definitely my decision.
Well, it obviously was very rewarding. So talk about some of the benefits that have come to you, intrinsically and otherwise, for being a part of this. And then I want Troy to ask his question.
Okay. Wow. How's this benefited me? Gosh, it's hard to really kind of sum that up, but I really think the Navajo poster project, it was definitely the project in college that I'm the most proud of. I really got to interact with Navajo people and really see how an entirely different culture relates to weather and also just science in general. For me personally, I'd never really been exposed to Native culture, and it was really great to appreciate that in such a really close and interactive way. And then, of course, too, I was able to present the project at the 98th AMS meeting, which I was really able to gain some skills in public speaking with that as well. It wasn't my best presentation, but I was still very glad to be there. And I feel like I learned a lot from people outside of my field of marine biology. And just seeing how important collaboration is across cultures, across scientific fields, and even, in an interdisciplinary mindset, how that can really be applied to everything that you do.
That's really cool. Troy, I know you wanted to ask something there.
Well, I'm not going to ask anything. My comment here is I'm amazed by these two people.
Exactly.
First of all, Victoria, there are meteorologists out there that don't like outreach, and here you are. You've got full support of your MIC and the WFO and the WCMs at the office. I think that's amazing, and I'm just floored. I'm amazed that you've reached out beyond the job that you've done. You're serving the public is amazing, and then with Natalie, you've diversified. You've gone outside your comfort zone in a sense. I say you're both amazing people, and I wish I had the skills that you have, and I congratulate you because, and I'm be interested to hear as well between you, Victoria, and Natalie, the outreach, some of the things that you did with some of these folks in these communities. I'm floored, and I'm not floored very often. You did a very good job. Very good job.
I'm blushing.
Well, you should get a pay raise. We'll call the MIC in the morning, get you a pay raise.
There you go.
But what about, when Natalie, you were in touch with Victoria and you found out that, this is what you're going to do. I'm interested in knowing how you went out, and I'm assuming that even Victoria probably went out with you as well and did some of this. I imagine that would be pretty amazing to take it out and say, hey, we're interested in your people. We're interested in this. We're interested to know how we can incorporate that back in the hazards program of the National Weather Service. God, tell me a story or two.
Ooh, how many stories I have lost. Yeah. It was, oh gosh. I know for a lot of the information gathering for the project, we'd take little field trips out onto the Navajo Nation. Sometimes Victoria would join me. Sometimes it would just be other people that happened to be in the office that were already going somewhere out on the reservation. And
I'm going to jump in there. I think you went with a meteorologist, you went with an electronics technician, you went with the WCM, you went with me. I mean, it was all hands on deck to get Natalie out onto the lands that we were talking about.
And so Victoria, this is a total WFO buy-in. This is a total Weather Forecast Office buy-in, right?
Yeah, I had initial management buy-in, and then I think once Natalie showed up and everyone was like, oh, you're a pretty cool college student, they were like, oh, yeah, I'll go out onto our CWA with you. Sounds great.
Cool.
I have a quick question following up from that fellow geographer, Victoria. Can you tell us a little bit of the background of, you've mentioned the Navajo Nation that you're working with. How many people do you have in your CWA who, or approximately? I mean, it sounds like it's an important constituent element of the community. And can you tell us a little bit to Natalie about what were your points of entry into that community, if that question makes sense? Did they just sort of answer a cold call from the Weather Service and say, sure, come on out? Or did you have other people that you worked through to reach that population and then to work with them? So I guess, Victoria, if you could tell us a little bit first about the population's importance.
Yeah, so it's hard to say how many people identify as Navajo, but if you go to Wikipedia and look up how many people are basically members of the tribe, there's about 300,000. And then within our CWA, not all those people are within our CWA necessarily. They might live in Phoenix, they might live in Albuquerque, they might live, I have a Navajo classmate who works for NASA in Maryland, but he's still a member of the Navajo Nation. Okay. I don't know if that 300,000 is who lives on the tribal lands or if it is all just the membership, I guess you will, of the tribe, the people that can be involved. And for your second question, I think that's going to be an awesome tie-in because I interrupted Natalie earlier for story time. So Natalie,
this is where all the good stories come in.
Yep, I figured.
Yeah, so I started out cold calling people that I had done research on, and it came with a mixed response. There were some people that were totally on board for the project from the get-go. There were others that were like, oh, maybe I can pass along your name to somebody else on the reservation that might help. And then some people either didn't respond, or some people for me, as somebody who is Caucasian and was working with the federal government at the time, some of the history that the Navajo Nation has dealt with. It's really important to take that into consideration. And I think I expect that some of the resistance that I did get might have been because of that.
So what you're saying basically is I'm with the federal government. I'm here to help.
Yeah.
Okay.
We tried really hard not to say that. That didn't go over very well.
Yeah, it was always a matter of being respectful. But as far as one really interesting story goes, I remember it was pretty late in the summer. We had already contacted quite a few people. We already had some information gathered. And I wanted to meet with someone at the Office of STEM Education on the Navajo Nation, just to get some clarification, maybe some translation work. And when I walked into the office, I was threatened with being kicked off of the reservation. And it took a lot of composure and reflection to realize that, yes, this isn't really personal, even though I was going in there with the expectation of, oh yeah, this is the STEM education office. Of course they're going to help. When in reality, that just wasn't the case.
So what was their reasoning, Natalie?
They did not like somebody from the federal government who isn't a part of their culture coming onto their land and asking questions. Yeah. And in that moment, I realized that really respect is what mattered. And I said, I'm sorry to bother you. I'm sorry I took your time. We'll let this drop. And then that's where fostering relationships with the other people who were willing to work with us really became important. We worked with people at a Native American museum in Flagstaff, Arizona. We also had Frank Morgan, who was a major translator for us, especially towards the end of the project. He's Navajo himself, and he was just really inspired by the language aspect. And then we had people from Window Rock, which is the capital of the Navajo Nation. We had somebody from KTNN, which is the Navajo Nation radio. They were all working with us. And it was all about just going into the communities and seeing who was really excited about the project and who had something really to tell us and give us a direction and where we should go. We had a few Navajo teachers tell us, gaps in the education system that they had and what they would like to see. And for some of them, it was like a water cycle portion. They told us they had no way to really explain that to their students in Navajo. And as you can see on the poster, we have a little corner dedicated to the water cycle. We took that input and we really took it to heart when making the poster.
Do I have to talk to make this show up big?
Yeah. So talk, Victoria.
There we go. So,
and if you don't talk, I'll talk, because Elle brought me mine down here. My wife is from Gallup. She's from Gallup, New Mexico, so she knows really, really well about the Navajo culture.
Hey, Victoria, Troy again here. Have you had, I'm interested because you pointed out this population may not be centered necessarily in the Flagstaff WFO or CWA. Have you had anyone try to reach you from any other CWAs wanting to see if they could get copies of this outreach material?
Good question, Troy.
Well, that's a great question. We have worked very closely with the Albuquerque CWA. Most of Navajo Nation is Arizona and New Mexico, which is fun because politically we're different regions for the National Weather Service. So what our office decided to do once this poster was ready to go and we were getting it printed is we decided to just print enough for the Albuquerque office as well and have them mailed there. Albuquerque might have also stepped up and paid for some. I can't remember exactly. We also sent some to Grand Junction, who has a little bit of Navajo Nation, and Salt Lake City office. And we just gave it to them. Honestly, maybe haven't done the best job of explaining it fully to them, but the goal of the poster is to be very self-explanatory. And we wrote out some talking points for them. The Albuquerque office, and maybe Natalie, you want to tell a little more about Frank. Frank lives in the Albuquerque CWA, our translator. we got connected to him through someone at Diné College, which is in Saline, Arizona. But they connected us to Frank in Albuquerque. And so he worked with us. He sent us, like, he'd handwrite out in Navajo, because there's some letters that aren't easy to put on a computer, translations, and send us pictures of what he had written. And then what we decided to do, because we didn't have funding, and he was comfortable with that, but we wanted to honor the time and skill and incredible language ability that he has. He's done other translation projects as well and has a background in environmental sciences. So we decided to take a day trip to Albuquerque, myself, Natalie, and somebody else from our office. And we went and met with Frank, and we spent time with him. We had a meal with him, and then we went to the Albuquerque office, and somebody from the Albuquerque office joined us as well, and we gave him the standard VIP tour and launched the weather balloon with him and gave him a certificate of appreciation, and really like devoted some time to him as a thanks, because we knew that was something we could give that we really hoped he would appreciate.
So I hope. I mean, I'm really hoping that Louis Ussolini knows about this at headquarters, because this is something that and WFOs are men and women in the WFOs around the country do an amazing job. Am I happy all the time with them? Not necessarily. But this is the classic case of you're not in your case, Victoria. You're not even you're working beyond your CWA, and you're an ASA. You're doing that. You're helping the WCM do this, and then the valuable work that Natalie's done. It's really, really amazing to me.
Yeah, never limit yourself with the letters after your name.
There you go. Well, it was one of the most amazing presentations I had seen in a while, and it only took me a year to get Victoria on the show. I tried really hard. You have to vouch for me. I did try for a whole year to get you on this show, Victoria.
You did. Natalie, do you want to tell the story about the waiter at the Cameron Trading Post?
Oh,
taught us, because I think that's a nice contrast to the story you told. Of just somebody like really welcoming us.
Yeah. So I think that was back during my site visit, if I remember correctly. So before I actually started formally working on this project, Noah actually sent me out just to make sure that I'd get along well with everyone in the office and to kind of learn a little bit more about my project. And Victoria was kind enough and smart enough to take me around to some of the really important Navajo cultural spots out on the Navajo Nation Reservation and in and around Flagstaff, Arizona. And we ended up at the Cameron Trading Post, and there's a restaurant inside, and one of the more famous Navajo foods are Navajo tacos, which is fried bread and then taco toppings on top, and it's amazing. And all the waiters there, or maybe most of them, they're actually Navajo, and they are native. And our waiter, he was serving us, and we kind of asked him, we're like, oh, do you know any Navajo? Do you know how to say like thank you in Navajo? And do you know how to say like this tastes good in Navajo? And he was really welcoming and really excited that we were there and asking questions as well. And I remember he hand wrote, and I still have a picture of it somewhere, of like how to say thank you in Navajo. And so just seeing that warmth in person, even at a restaurant of all places, I think that really set the tone for the positivity for the rest of the project.
So Natalie, were there times that you went into schools or places like that? Victoria, you may have done it too, where you just got looks of amazement from the kids, or what's it been like?
Well, unfortunately for Natalie, she left with the project going to print.
Oh no! She did all the hard work. It's kind of the opposite of most folks that show up when the work's done.
Yeah. Sorry, Natalie. We get a lot of folks. Oftentimes we'll go into just a normal school and we'll come with the English, the Spanish, and the Navajo, or we'll be at the county fair and people will say, "Oh, what's this? Can I have one?" And I say, "Yeah, we have English, Spanish, and Navajo." And they go, "You have Navajo?"
There you go.
And we'll get folks from other tribes that say, "Why don't you have my language?"
There
And
you
that's
go.
when I say, "What's your contact information? We'd love to make one. Would you like something different? What would you like it to look like?" Because
Natalie, would you like to come out again? Yeah.
Right.
I wouldn't mind.
Hope he's next. A lot of people just get really drawn to it. People will say, "Oh, my neighbor's Navajo," even if they're not Navajo. I want to teach you all a word as well, because the Navajo call themselves Dine, D-I-N-E with a, what's that called?
Accent mark?
Accent at the end of it, yeah. And Dine means the people in the Navajo language. And it's a really important word to know because it says to somebody, "I'm recognizing what you call yourself," as opposed to what the world and what the government and things like that call yourself. So we would do our best to refer to people that way or however they prefer to be labeled or identified. A lot of that humility Natalie alluded to, and it was like a retraining of your brain. I don't want to say work in a bad way. We just had to sort of like adjust to coming in very humbly.
Now, the Native American community recognizes natural phenomenon as living beings, right? Mm-hmm. So talk about that for a minute, and which ones are sort of male and which ones are sort of female. I found that very interesting.
Well, I don't want to speak for all Native cultures because I'm not sure, but my understanding is that that's a common thread through many Native cultures, is sort of personification of natural events. Natalie, do you want to talk about male and female rain?
Oh gosh, I have not.
Actually, you can read it.
Yeah, the bad rain is the male rain. The soft, gentle rains are the female rain, right?
Yeah, that's true. And if I remember correctly as well, the word for cloud, which is coast, if I'm probably not pronouncing that correctly. I've lost all my Navajo. It's the word for necks, I believe, because they see like clouds as part of this larger character in the sky, and the clouds are like part of the head and the neck area. And of course, with the rain, there's the male-female dichotomy with that. And of course, like the male rain tends to be more of a thunderstorm, more dynamic, whereas like female rain would be more of a sprinkle, and it's more refreshing and revitalizing. And for me, as somebody who wasn't familiar with that concept, I found it really cool and really neat. And I remember I just wanted to ask everyone, like, why do you assign genders to rain of all things? And it really goes into the whole like Navajo origin, not the origin story, but maybe their origin narrative of like there's first man and first woman as well. And then for the creatures as well, there's like male and female versions. And it's a really interesting cultural aspect.
But you go ahead.
Sorry, Kim. Go ahead.
No, go ahead, Kim.
Well, I'm fascinated by this discussion of the particular aspects of the atmosphere that had different kinds of gendered identities. Now, you studied French, is that right?
Yes, I did.
Can you contrast that with people who've studied foreign languages? Many other foreign languages have gendered pronouns, and so every noun is gendered. This table in German is masculine. Can you contrast what you're talking about with the way that gender is used in, say, French? It sounds like a different thing.
It is very different. I know in French, rain is la pluie and snow is la neige, and those are both female, but the word itself isn't inherently masculine or feminine. It's more of the rain, the snow. That's kind of, I know in German it's der, die, and das. I think.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
I think that's the
yes.
equivalent.
Yeah.
I've never taken any German, but yeah.
You nailed it.
What about Polish, Natalie?
Oh yeah, don't go into Polish.
Okay.
But yeah, no, it seems like in Navajo, the word itself, their Navajo grammar structure is really different, especially for me coming from a French background, where the entire word will change depending on the situation. And yeah, in French, it seems more of like the article or the word that comes before is male or female, but not the actual word itself. If that makes any sense at all.
No, so that's kind of what I was getting at. It sounds like what you're describing, they meaningfully assigned a gender to a phenomenon, because to them it represented something about a narrative about the genders and how, how male and female play out, and that was a meaningful. I mean, in German, the fact that der Tisch is like masculine, it doesn't mean that the table imbues masculine qualities. It's just an art of almost it might have been when the language was new, but now it's taken almost artifactually. I mean, it's just a part of the language. At
Anyone who tried to learn German can attest to that.
Yeah. There's nothing masculine about the table, but the wall is feminine. Like, structurally, it's just artifactual. But what you're describing is really different. And so this gets me to, I was so interested in just learning, what did you guys find? So what all is on that poster? You've showed that poster. What all was part of the work? It sounds like you didn't just straight up translate like a cloud chart. It sounds like you did much more.
Yeah. I don't know, Victoria, if you want to hold up the chart and I can do my little spiel. So there were some people within NOAA that expected us to just kind of translate the English cloud chart and present it as just a Navajo version of that. But considering the landscape and like the cultural differences, I knew that wouldn't do the project and the Navajo community and even the Weather Service justice by just kind of Google translating something and then printing it off. And so I was actually really lucky. I got to go to a Navajo rug auction at the beginning of the project, and that's kind of where the inspiration came from. So I modeled the project I modeled the poster off of Navajo storm rugs, and they have a similar pattern to the one we see in the poster, where in the center of it, that little box represents the weaver of the rug, their home. And then they have 4 lightning bolts that extend to the 4 sacred mountains within Navajo culture. And so with the poster, I tried to incorporate that by having the center of the poster with the 4 lightning bolts extending to like the 4 major objectives of the project. And that was to promote public safety, to promote weather outreach, to contribute to language preservation, and to include cultural elements as well. So there is that basis with the Navajo storm rugs. And okay, yeah, thank you.
If I talk, it'll pop up on the screen.
There.
Is it there?
You want to talk then?
For those looking.
Natalie and Victoria, while you hold that up, let me ask you, and I have a feeling this is already covered. Is this available as a PDF online at the WFO out of Flagstaff? Is it a PDF that we can see? People want to see this.
Yep. Let me, for folks, I'll talk through it, but I'll also show you how to get there.
Okay.
So if you go to weather.gov/Flagstaff.
Yep.
And let me go back one step. And then over here, local programs on the far right, there's a drop down for educational materials.
Yep.
And when that loads up, you'll see a lot of general NOAA educational materials, the English cloud chart, the Spanish cloud chart, and then this one produced by our office, the Navajo/Dinebazad, which is the name for the Navajo language. weather poster, and then it pulls up the product, and there you go. There's the weaver's home in the blue box in the center, and the 4 lightning bolts in each direction, like Natalie was saying. The storm rug tassels around the outside, and Natalie also used colors that are in the traditional storm rug pattern as well. Pretty much every time I hand one out to somebody, or I've heard from folks in our office too, when they distribute them, people are pretty immediately drawn to this picture in the corner of the 2 young girls with, and I'm going to try to pronounce it, Cien, which is the traditional Navajo hair bun, which is symbolic of storms. So one of the most traditional ways to present yourself, which can actually be worn by men or women, is symbolic of the rain falling and the sunbeams and the storm.
That is so neat.
It is.
And one thing I also want to point out, I'm going to unscreen share. Well, no, first look at the water cycle, which has a deserty landscape. So we used red rocks that look like Monument Valley, and we've got terminology that Frank actually sort of crafted linguistically, because a lot of these terms, if you were to word for word translate them, they would be very story-like. Plant uptake is five or six different Navajo words, and it's saying something you could probably imagine poetically, like the roots take in its life from the dirt, or something like that. You can sort of imagine what it might be poetically. I'm not sure exactly, but this picture is very local specific to Navajo Nation. And now I'm going to hold up the English poster, and this was also Natalie's idea to really make the location specific, because if you look at this graphic, it shows snow-capped mountains, green fields, a lake, things we don't really have in northern Arizona. At least they don't. This looks like Mount Rainier and the Pacific Northwest. So how is anybody around here going to relate to this image, especially somebody who's really heart homeland doesn't look like this at all? And so Natalie actually created the graphic that was local specific.
That is going the extra mile there. That is so cool.
Wow.
Yep.
Kim, did you get to ask all your questions?
Sorry. Yep. I know I got caught up on an esoteric point there about the gendered language differences, but that was the heart of the question. I was so interested to know what all it was that you had found, because a straight translation exercise on the surface, people can hear that and just think, oh, why can't you just pull up Google, type in a word, and get it translated? What you just showed was the significance of weather within the culture, and the ways that weather is played out and represented in the culture. And that is, I think, to anyone who actually works in translation services, learning the culture is an incredibly important part of doing the job. What you guys did was you threw yourself into the exercise with probably, I'm guessing neither of you had training in doing something like that before.
No, I didn't.
You mean you do? You have your own. Natalie has her own experiences with language, both at home and at school, where I imagine subconsciously you've encountered that. And at least that was the sense I got over the summer, because Natalie picked up some of these concepts that I've mentioned about how things don't word for word translate, how you mentioned, Kim, and it came very naturally to her. I experienced it as a park ranger, translating nature to people that maybe don't daily experience nature. And actually the word used for educational park ranger within the agency is interpreters. Educational interpreters. Yep. And because you're supposed to be interpreting the natural and cultural resources, they call it, to the public. And it throws people off all the time, because we were never language interpreters. But so the notion of taking something that and making it accessible to others was not necessarily foreign, I don't think, to either of us. Sorry, Natalie, do you disagree or do you agree?
No, I mean, you're completely right. I know for me personally, like, as Victoria alluded to, my father, he actually was born in Poland, and I grew up hearing Polish in the household. And so again, like kind of seeing how cultures overlap and how languages overlap, that was something that has always kind of been present to me. And I just tried to take, I guess, the things that were important to me and to Navajo people into account as I was making the poster.
Cool. Hey, I've got a question, Natalie and Victoria, and Kim will be very proud of me here because this is a Kim Troy sort of question. But how do these communities, if you got out there and you worked with these communities and you looked at all this, how do they deal with the hazards, lightning, severe thunderstorms, flash floods, tornadoes,
blizzards?
What did you discover in that process?
Go for it, Natalie, if you have something in mind.
Well, I know, especially when we were speaking with Frank about translation work, and also I was in contact with a translator at the local hospital in Flagstaff, and both of them seemed to really stress that if there's like severe weather or that's expected, that we can't use normal warning techniques, or maybe not normal, but our habitual warning techniques to inform Navajo people of that situation. Apparently in Navajo culture, it's seen as somewhat taboo to say, like the word tornado, for existence. It's taboo to say it because if you do, it's seen as inviting a tornado to come to you.
I used to think that when I was a kid.
Yeah.
The word that should not be spoken in this house.
Exactly. And so for like warnings and things, you can't really use the word tornado, and you need to be much more passive in order to get the reaction that you want. And I think Victoria can explain that a little bit more.
Yeah. That was a nice big surprise at the end of the poster project to find out, our warning language, like our standard warning protocol words, might be threatening to some people in this culture. The more I've explored this concept, I've gotten different answers from different people within the culture. I could just sort of ballpark and say about 3/4 of people agree, 1/4 of people disagree, and somewhere in there, there's some overlap of people who say, well, my granny might feel that way, but I don't. Or my grandchild might feel this way, but I don't. We were taught by a local university language professor of Navajo to not say the Navajo word for tornadoes out loud because it's like summoning it. I still won't do it. I know it's not my culture, but I can't bring myself to say those words because I know what it means to them. And with warnings, we've been trying to find out if there's a way, just like Puerto Rico broadcasting bilingually, when we issue a warning for a certain geographic area on NOAA Weather Radio, could we also have a translation that broadcasts in Navajo? It's unclear how impactful that would be. How many people only speak Navajo is probably pretty limited, but the buy-in might be huge. And the response.
But Victoria, do y'all find in the office, does your WCM find that community is using weather radio?
That's a great question. We do have service out in that area, and it's better than some other types of services. Radio is one thing that people really listen to.
I was going to say, do you work with a radio station that serves that people group? You mentioned it before. Do you have a relationship with them?
We haven't dived into depth with them working on this aspect of the project. It's more sort of like a discovery that we've had that we haven't had time to grow any further. But the way it's impacting our office locally is we're thinking about maybe even saying things 2 different ways, depending on who our audience is. Natalie, do you remember the example about flash floods that Frank gave?
Oh gosh,
how to say it?
I don't remember.
I can get close. I won't be exactly right, but he he basically phrased a better way to say, let's use a watch as an example, because warnings are pretty imminent, and that I get more mixed reviews as to whether we need to change our language for that. But the way he phrased it was something like, the last time conditions were like this, there was flooding. Instead of, there are probably going to be floods. That's seen as very like threatening way to say things.
Wow.
That's
enlightening.
That's also
for everybody.
different things.
Communicated with any of
They
the television
do,
people in
to
the
us.
Flagstaff market. I mean, did the television people have this knowledge you're sharing tonight?
What television people in the Flagstaff market?
Oh.
Really?
We don't have any. We don't have a TV station here. We have a one person that works for the Phoenix station and covers weather and other news up here. So for us, it's more about social media, more about radio.
And so you're saying they do? Do you mean they listen to like AM, FM radio, or are you talking about
KTNN, which you can live stream, is Navajo Nation Radio.
Okay.
And there's a different radio station on Hopi that people will also listen to because they broadcast some of the national indigenous programs like Indian Country Today and some of the other ones.
Do they do
Facebook or any of the Twitter, the social platforms?
KTNN does do weather. The woman that does the weather broadcasting, we did try to work with her, but she had a family emergency that summer and we haven't been able to reconnect with her since. In detail, at least. What was your other question?
About social media. Do they use Facebook or Twitter, Instagram, any of those platforms?
Oh, yeah.
Really?
Tons. You have to get, it's basically just a really rural area. Most of these people, and I hate, how do I want to say it? They're my neighbors. So most of my Navajo Nation neighbors, I don't want to call them these people, most of my Navajo Nation neighbors live in basically just a really rural area with, in some ways, fewer resources, in some ways, more resources. You know, the schools have, in some places, excellent funding, and in other places, really poor funding, which is pretty much like any other rural place in the U.S.
Yep.
And it's not that different from a rural place, but that rural places in general, like if you think about the Weather Ready Nation stuff that we're working on at National Weather Service, one of the aspects of that is serving vulnerable populations. And I would say rural people in general, for the protection of life and property, are a vulnerable population, right? You're just frankly farther from medical care. You might live down a 10-mile dirt road that gets rutted out when you get more than 2 inches of rain. And all those things just make you a little more vulnerable.
One of our really smart listeners, Steve Holmes, asked a question that for you guys, Natalie and Victoria. It said, there's a strong sense of community on the reservation, and he had heard one woman list about 10 clans from which she was descended. How does that help in spreading weather information?
I think that it's a tough question because the generational differences. So I'm going to answer from both generations. The elders, and I'm going to stereotype here, if you imagine little granny that takes her sheep for a walk every day, or grandpa who, goes out and herds the horses, the wild horses, or whatever visual you want to come up with. That's a great stereotype. Those folks know weather just as well as we do. They have different tools. They're not looking at radar and stuff like that, but they're probably, I try to be humble about this, but maybe it's easier because I'm not a meteorologist. But, I believe, I convince myself, I believe, I know that they know just as much as we do in a different way. And so we constantly had to remind ourselves that the way that we were trying to bring weather in and invite weather education and ask members of the Navajo Nation how they might want some Navajo education about weather and design it for them we still had to respect that some people might say, I don't need to look at this. And they probably don't. And that, there's where the community comes in, right? Because Granny moving the sheep around will probably, tell her neighbor if there's an issue, or tell her granddaughter who's playing out in front of the hogan in these really rural places. In places where there's good internet service, we have several Facebook groups that are actually one of our key sources of weather reports. So the road conditions is the really big group that there's probably like 200,000 members of this roads condition group for Navajo Nation, and people are reporting where there's bad visibility, when there's a dust storm, where so-and-so's road is rutted out, where you can't get to school one day or something like that. And that's like a very modern community aspect of this rural population.
So talk about Flagstaff for a moment. It's one of the most beautiful places in this country, in my opinion, and I fell in love with it when we came there last year. Talk about the weather in Flagstaff and this huge CWA that you serve. It's got to be one of the biggest, Victoria.
It's one of, it's up there, probably top 5.
Looks like Albuquerque's bigger.
I think Albuquerque's a little bigger. Natalie, do you want to talk about what it was like living here for the summer?
Oh yeah, I totally expected cactus everywhere.
No, it's beautiful with the trees and the red rocks and
surprise.
Yeah, it was a big surprise.
Pine trees.
And I remember just like on the descent on the plane, because I was coming from North Carolina, it just kind of blew my mind that, oh gosh, my site visit must have been in April, I think.
Yeah.
And I was surprised to see snow still on the ground at the base of all these huge ponderosa pine trees. And I think that really hit me, that Flagstaff is its own special place. And of course, I went to the Grand Canyon and hiked a little bit of that over the summer. And I went down to Horseshoe Bend with a few of the members at the office. And it really just gave me this greater appreciation for not only the culture that I was immersing myself in, but also just the physical landscape as well. It was just, Flagstaff is one of my favorite places too, and I'd love to go back someday.
Hey, Natalie, how hot was it at Horseshoe Bend?
I remember it was like 107, and I remember it not being that bad because there was no humidity.
Yeah.
And so everyone else was kind of struggling with the hike. And then I was over there like, oh, this is a day at the beach for me.
Elevation is the big thing around here. It's what drives everything. I mean, temperature, orographic, precipitation, changes in where the monsoon is building. So we're like at the southern extent of the Colorado Plateau, at a high point in Flagstaff, and north of us it actually goes down in elevation to Page, Antelope Canyon, Lake Powell, Horseshoe Bend, the places Natalie's talking about. So our CWA, if for you guys, you were talking about nor'easters and figuring out where it's going to be rain, hail, and snow, for us it's snow line. Like, where's the transition going to be elevation wise? Flagstaff can be 20 degrees colder than Sedona, and we're 40-minute drive apart. So
what's
that's the big.
Just out of curiosity, Victoria, what is the average annual snowfall for the WFO for the climate site there? How much snowfall do you see in the winter season?
100 inches a year.
Oh, wow.
And you got about 3 feet of that in one day earlier this year, didn't you?
Well, and right now, I don't know if you guys are following fire news, but about 1 mile north of town, we have a large fire that broke out yesterday. So that's all the story right now. We had a really wet May, unusually wet May, and then a pretty cool June, and we haven't gotten our normal summer thunderstorms yet. They're expected to come in tomorrow, which hopefully will fall as rain quickly. Hopefully we won't get too much wind with that. But we have a pretty big wildfire going on right near town called the Museum Fire. So for those of you fire buffs, you might want to check it out. It's a neat one. But we get it. We span the gamut weather-wise. we don't get too many tornadoes, but we've even had some outbreaks of those in the past. So.
And you have
James, they're so unlucky there. You have a WFO that has no opportunity and pleasure to work with TV people.
They are blessed.
Let me ask you this, Victoria. What about? I assume, and I've got a pile of chats over here. Do we use NWS chat a lot at the office? And we obviously with these communities, you probably have emergency managers out there. Do they use chat? Are you able to work with them in those more traditional ways, or WCM?
Yeah. Are you thinking of Navajo Nation emergency managers? Yeah. I'll jump in on that one. Actually, I'm going to be vulnerable for a minute, and I'm going to reveal a major faux pas in this project, which was that we did a really good job of going to individuals and saying, hey, do you even like this idea? And we would meet teachers that said yes. Natalie had this great experience where she worked with a woman at the museum who's a teacher and was about to go to law school. She was a really lovely woman. And we said, hey, we're thinking about making this poster. We're trying to translate it into Navajo. And she's like, I really think it should be bilingual. And we're like, oh. And she said, yeah, it should be bilingual because not everybody reads and speaks Navajo. And some people are learning, and it would really be a great opportunity for like different generations to sit down together and look at it together. And gosh, if we had never met with that woman, the poster wouldn't be what it is.
Yeah.
And so then going from there, we met with all these people, we got positive buy-in, we adjusted things where people recommended we didn't incorporate them, or if they were sensitive topics that really shouldn't go out to the public, we respected that. And then we were taking it to the Department of Emergency Management on Navajo Nation, just because our WCM has a good relationship with a couple of the staff there, just to get their opinion, to have them look it over, see if they, we call them cultural red flags. Is there anything we shouldn't be talking about publicly? And they said, oh, we'll take this to the elders for you. And for those of you not watching, I have my hands over my face in embarrassment because I am not Native. I had never thought about taking it to the elders, and how terribly inappropriate of me to not have thought of that. Yet how grateful I was that they were willing to take it for us. The elders approved it, and we were good to move forward. I felt lucky, honestly, that we were able to move past that major cultural faux pas. And it's just one of those things that you just have to roll with and apologize for and be humble about and move on.
But were there any other facepalm moments like that in the project?
Probably, but I'm not trying to forget that.
Now, I heard you say in one of our discussions, Victoria, that Owlie, the Weather Service, mascot, has a bad connotation in the Navajo culture.
Natalie's nodding her head, so I'm going to let her talk about that one.
Yeah, so one of the things that I didn't realize, like in preparing for the project, and it really took me going to Flagstaff, going on the reservation and discovering, was that owls are a sign of death in Navajo culture. And that kind of, for me, that was really kind of new to me, just because I've always seen owls as like cute and cuddly and fluffy, and maybe they'll eat a rat, but especially coming from like a biology background. But we really had to take owls as like an omen and a sign of death into account whenever we were communicating with the Navajo community about weather and about the project as a whole. Yeah, Owlie, I don't think would be taken too well in the Navajo community.
Nope.
For that.
No, it wouldn't.
And so, and so
everyone's like, oh no.
But, I mean, that's very important. You could show up with that on the poster and it would be terrible.
Yeah.
That would be a really bad thing. So, I get a notification every time from American Express when, we use one of our credit cards, and I noticed there are 4 airline tickets to Albuquerque that my wife's bought tonight, just on the mention of Navajo tacos and fry bread tonight. So I think we've got her mouth watering upstairs at this point. So I had one picture I wanted to share real quick. That is the Amtrak chief at the station in Flagstaff when the blizzard was
February 21st-ish.
That sounds good. And I programmed to get up early and watch the train that day because I love that restaurant across the street in Flagstaff. We ate there during a thunderstorm last summer and just fell in love with it. But that's the amazing amount of snow that was falling during that event, and that truly was an incredible snowstorm. And I think, I guess that's about all my questions. I know James probably needs to wrap here pretty soon, but Victoria, the project doesn't end here. Where does it go from here?
No, it doesn't. So actually, I can think of one other sort of faux pas, which is that we took the poster to one of our working group meetings with partners, and somebody from a different tribal nation, White Mountain Apache, said, "This is really great. The Apaches are related a little bit linguistically to the Navajo, so we were excited for them to look at it, and we kind of wanted to inspire them to see if they wanted us to do something for them." And they said, "This is really great, but Navajo was not originally a written language. So what about people who don't read Navajo and just speak it?" It's not even a just, they speak. Navajo started getting written down after the code talkers in World War II, the famous code talkers. So,
yeah.
So after that, it became a written language, but it was never originally a written language. So there's nothing wrong with being a non-Navajo reader. It's not like that's a bad thing to not read or write the language. And so we were sort of like, better fix that. So what we've been working on now is we've funded one of hopefully up to 4 short little videos that will go into depth about the poster, each of the quadrants of the poster. So there's the word bank, the cloud levels section, the water cycle, and then what we started with, because so many people were drawn to it, was the story of the hair bun and how it relates to rain. And that movie, it's about 3 minutes long. It's bilingual with Navajo first and then English second. It will be released maybe even this week, very soon. We're waiting for the monsoon to release it. So we'll see when it rains. We will release it. And it's really beautiful in my opinion, and it's exciting to see that there are these like anchoring connections to weather that as scientists we don't even think about.
You're eating this up, aren't you, Kim?
Oh, loving it. Yeah, no, it's wonderful. This has been great.
We got to move on. What advice could you give those in the weather enterprise and other parts of the United States to reach people groups that have not been reached successfully? What advice would you give them? Don't speak all at once.
I'm going to start, and then you can follow Natalie.
Okay.
I'm going to start with ask questions, don't tell answers.
Yeah, and I would say be as inclusive as possible while also being as respectful as possible.
There you go.
Would you change shirts, James?
Would y'all also agree that would you also agree that you never know until you ask or get out there and approach these people? I mean, I think in some cases we sit here and we sit back and say, well, that's not going to work. I think people could have sat back and said that about this, but without both of you, this outreach.
We said it some days too. We said it some days too. And we kept going. Sorry.
So if anybody wants to get in touch with you ladies, what's the best way to do that? You're on social media, Twitter, Facebook. What you got?
I'm on Twitter, Natalie Panashok on there. Might be a little hard to spell, but you can find me.
Even harder to say.
We will spell it on weatherbrains.com. So there you go. Victoria, anybody wants to get in touch with you? What's the best way?
Yeah, my NOAA email is best victoria.allen, spelled ALLEN, at NOAA.gov. And folks that want to request copies of the poster, we do pay to print them in-house. So if you have an ability to print them out yourself, please go for it. But if you need us to mail you copies of this poster, we will send them your way.
Wow.
And we'll put the URL for the poster that you showed us up on the website as well, weatherbrains.com. So ladies, thank you. This has been a fascinating discussion.
Wow.
Thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you so much for having us.
Thanks,
Good luck.
everybody.
Yeah, good luck. We'll see you guys. Thank you all for coming on the show tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Okay, so we are going to take a break here and talk some astronomy with Tony Rice, and we're going to come back with picks of the week and a whole lot more. We're not done as WeatherBrains rolls along.
Looking beyond the atmosphere, here's Tony Rice with your astronomy outlook.
July 22nd, 1969. The Apollo 11 astronauts were on their way back home at 24,000 miles an hour. Back here on Earth, the aircraft carrier USS Hornet and USS Arlington were steaming for the planned splashdown point in the Pacific Ocean. President Nixon would also be on board the Hornet the morning of the splashdown to greet the returning heroes. Back in Hawaii, Air Force Captain Hank Brantley was working at Hickam Air Force Base, reviewing photos from the National Reconnaissance Office's 417 program when he spotted a violent storm heading straight for the planned splashdown point. In a 2004 Aviation Week article, Brantley described, quote, high-level vortices that were bird-like, almost like an eagle shape. We dubbed them Screaming Eagles. That storm would have ripped Apollo's parachutes to shreds. And without parachutes, they would have crashed into the ocean with a force that would have killed them instantly, unquote. Now, this was the early days of satellite meteorology. Coverage was far from complete, especially in the Pacific tropics. Brantley was the only person who knew that NASA, the Navy, and the President were heading into a dangerous storm. But this NRO program and its technology were strictly classified. How could he warn them with photos he couldn't share from a satellite that didn't exist? Brantley was known as a pioneer in satellite meteorology, though. He reached out to the Navy's forecasting office for the recovery fleet, arranging to meet Captain Willard Houston Jr. in a parking lot on the base. Houston had only recently assumed command of the Navy's Fleet Weather Center at Pearl Harbor. Fortunately, Houston had worked for this NRO project previously and had the necessary clearance. The two went to Brantley's office and reviewed the latest images. Houston immediately reached out to Rear Admiral Donald Davis, who commanded the recovery fleet. Unfortunately, Davis didn't have the necessary clearance, but he took the respected Navy meteorologist at his word and began rerouting to a spot 250 nautical miles to the northeast. NASA, though, like any space agency, hates surprises, especially for a crewed mission in flight. Change introduces risk. It took some convincing, but NASA agreed to adjust the capsule's course to a new atmospheric reentry point, bringing the crew down to the new location. But everyone was warned they better be right. On July 24th, 1969, the Command Module Columbia hit the top of the atmosphere at 6:35 a.m. Hawaii time. Parachutes deployed successfully 9 minutes later, and splashdown occurred at 6:50 a.m. The crew was on board the Hornet about an hour later. Conditions at the recovery site were recorded as 10 nautical miles of visibility, with broken clouds, moderate winds, and a temperature of 82 degrees Fahrenheit. When the Corona Reconnaissance Satellite Program and the 4117 meteorological satellite that supported it were declassified in 1995, Houston could finally reveal the story behind the Navy Commendation Medal that he'd received for his part in saving Apollo 11. He also learned that reconnaissance planes were sent to the original splashdown coordinates. Pilots had found that Screaming Eagle tearing through the area just as predicted.
Wow.
That's your astronomy outlook. Follow me in RTP Hokie for more spacey stuff like this.
And that's Tony Rice with the rest of the story.
Way to go, Tony.
That's the best one ever. I would have to say. Wouldn't you agree, Kim? Wouldn't you agree, Troy?
I agree.
Yeah, I tell you, just watching all this coverage this, past week, going back and reliving all that. I know you're not old enough, Kim. Troy, were you old enough to remember
Nah,
that week?
You and me. Kim's way too young.
Yeah. But, it brought back so many chilling memories, like, when we were waiting for, transmissions to come in when they were coming into the atmosphere. And, you know, a lot was riding on this at the time, even for a 7-year-old kid.
Yep.
It brought back a lot of memories. And little did I know that there was one more hazard that we never heard about. So that was a great story. So, wow, fascinating discussion tonight. One of the best.
To me, I don't know, Kim. To me, this is just amazing. This is people going above and beyond what the expectation is. And the good news is we're reaching out to people that we've never really approached in the past. And I have to give Natalie and Victoria a big salute. Really a job well done.
Oh, they did. And I don't know that they fully understand or aware of or appreciate just how diligent they were and how incredibly thoughtful their approach was, but also the way they've presented it to us tonight. Everything that they said was so thoughtful, and how the humility really showed through. And I think if there's anything that I really enjoyed, it was that, and the refreshing honesty of sometimes you don't know when you don't know what you don't know, and that can be really hard to deal with. But the desire that they had to reach that population is what carried through, and it got them through every challenge and perhaps what they felt was a misstep. I think that it's just a natural evolution. If you don't know how the culture works, then sometimes you're not going to step in and find the right person at first too. So they were open though to the process of discovery, and that is what set this apart from being just a rote translation exercise. I mean, right now we have a graduate student here working with Spanish-speaking populations to translate things like Storm Prediction Center Outlook categories and other kinds of products. And it's not about just translation in a rote sense. It's about digging into the cultures. In our country, we have many different ways of speaking Spanish, many different cultures that come into the mix. And so different kinds of exactly what they were talking about, just ways of life that inform the conversation. And you don't know what you don't know before you.
Well, I think what you're saying, Kim, is you go into this respecting their culture.
Yes.
You go into this respecting their culture and look at the rewards that come as a result of that.
Mm-hmm. I hadn't really thought about until tonight, just hearing your line of questioning, both of you, and their responses. Our field is so well positioned to be so open to that, because at the end of the day, all we care about is saving lives. And we don't care who you are, what your background. We care that we have done our job for you. And what that means is stepping into other people's shoes with perfect humility, because there's nothing that's more important than their safety. And that's just a really wonderful thing. And yeah, this was a great show. They were just really wonderful.
It warmed my heart, that's for sure. So time for the weather roundup, ladies and gentlemen. It's nice to see not so many heat advisories and excessive heat warnings on the old hazards map now, as we were referring to earlier. A little bit in northern Nevada, but the rest of the country is they're noticeably absent tonight. That's good news.
Well, you know, I'm just looking up on the screen here, and I just noticed Flagstaff just issued 750, 850, 950. What zone is Flagstaff in, Bill? What time zone?
Right?
It's in Mountain.
Okay, well, it was an hour ago, but the WFO, they just issued a flash flood warning that I noticed.
I see it. You're right.
Yeah. So, again, I've now you've given me another place on my bucket list that I have to go. Thanks, Bill, for driving up my travel budget. And, we now understand your family who holds the American Express card.
Well, exactly. I just have to keep a close eye on them, because pretty soon we'll be traveling to Albuquerque. Yeah, there's actually a flash flood watch, I guess, west of Albuquerque there.
Yeah,
in the area there, just over western New Mexico. So I guess it's good that the monsoon is kicking in, also around Roswell.
Yep,
one down there, and a flash flood warning down around Carlsbad, or a flood warning. So,
well, that in a way leads into my pick of the week. One thing I wanted tell you, and I'd never seen this, Kim, and I know you have because you're on top of all this. But my pick of the week this week is the, I guess, NWS Geographic Information System page. Now, Kim, I'm watching to see if you know a little about this. You have the, it's called the NWS Safer Hazard Dashboard, Situational Awareness for Emergency Response. This is truly a neat page. I happened to see it. Believe it or not, I had not seen this. I was at airport operations at Austin Bergstrom International Airport in their brand new operations center, do some work out there. And I walked through and I said, what's that website? And they said, you know what that is. Weather. I said, I've never seen that website on the wall. And that's my pick of the week. And just to go and fool around, they've got tropical tab at the top. They've got the hazard dashboard. You can go in as close as you want to, or as far out as you want to. You can look at the number of tornado warnings in the screen or flash flood warnings and that sort of thing. I think it's really, really a cool site. So that's my pick of the week. And I assume that I could, well, in fact, I can do it, but I can't bring it up here. I just carried it over, and I'm now into parts of Arizona, and I can see that flash flood warning. So it's really a neat thing, my pick of the week.
Yeah, James had a name for your pick, Troy, before you got on board. He called it a time suck. That's the ultimate honor for a pick of the week.
And you know what? That's the ultimate compliment from James Fan. So,
exactly. So
I take it.
Yeah, no question about it. Well, that's outstanding. Troy, Kim, pick of the week.
Sure. So my pick of the week, I actually was going to key in on Troy, your pick, and followed up with another data display that is showing prototype fee, the probabilistic hazard information. I'm going to save that though, because our guests, when they presented their poster, they showed and then that sort of quadrants, the way they split things apart were the quadrants, and there was lightning emanating to the four sides. I'm not sure if this is meaningful in the exact same way. Okay, you're holding up the poster, Bill. A friend of mine at the University of Oklahoma, he's actually the associate director of the Cooperative Institute for Mesoscale Meteorological Studies. He got his PhD in geography, same as me, same department. And he was working with the indigenous peoples of Oklahoma. He did a poster presentation on some of his dissertation research, and he used the exact same layout with the lightning emanating to the four quadrants, and it made me think that, well, first of all, I think it'd just be interesting if you want to see another perspective on working with tribal populations in another place, and looking at how they understand weather and climate. This is a good resource. The poster itself was his early findings. He has a whole set of papers and dissertation you should look up if you're really interested. But if you want to just get a quick picture, that the graphic, it's stunningly similar. So I actually am intending to talk with him and see how that came about, and see if there are intertribal similarities among different populations, because we don't have the Navajo here, at least not in any sort of significant proportion. I think he was predominantly working with the Kiowa. So just I found that really interesting, and that's my pick.
That is awesome, and we can't wait to see your other pick at some point down the road too, Kim.
Yes.
Now, I don't have a pick of the week, but I'll talk about next week's guest. We'll have Joseph Trujillo. We'll continue with the theme of bilingual science communication, talking about research that he's done on how Latino people interpret weather information. So we'll continue this. So Kim, you'll have to be here next week.
I will have to be. He's one of my students. He was actually the one I was just talking about. The Spanish.
Okay, good.
Yep. Okay, good. Awesome. I knew he was coming up. I'm so excited. Yep, this is a perfect set to put together. Perfect.
That is awesome. And we got a lot of great shows coming up in coming weeks, but that is next week's show. And that will be a lot of fun. Well, any further business we need to bring before this August body tonight, Kim or Troy?
What a great show. Thanks for being here, Natalie and Victoria, and Kim, Bill, James. He's, of course, doing the technical hour at the very moment that we speak. It's good to see and talk to everyone here. Good show.
Outstanding. Well, WeatherBrains is the weekly netcast all about the weather. We generally record it on Monday nights at 8:30. Next week, we will record at 7 o'clock. I've got to make sure Joseph can handle that, unless you run into him in the hallway there somewhere in the worldwide center of weather, Kim, wherever. whatever y'all call it these days. But we will at least get to have the show on Monday night instead of having to move it to a completely different day. But until next week, when we'll continue with this same theme of bilingual science communication, I'm Bill Murray for the whole WeatherBrains gang. Have a great week. And as I always tell you, keep an eye to the sky because you'll always have something fun to look at. Well, outstanding.
Yeah, a lot of fun.
Well, I'm so glad they made it. I was
lot of fun.
I was afraid they weren't going to get here.
Yeah,
but they got.
Yeah, thank you so much for working so hard to bring them on. They were awesome.
Yeah, Bill.
Yeah, I knew when I saw the poster at NWA, I said that's something cool. So worked out great. Y'all have a great week.
Hey, y'all too.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And that's a wrap. Got a little break here in the newscast. Thank you guys for watching. And again, we talked about platform changes. That is just for us. Nothing changes on the consumer side, the podcast feed, the YouTube channel, nothing changes. It's just a matter of the platform we use to get this thing on video. So thank you guys for listening. Had a great time this week. Great show. And we'll see you guys next Monday. Again, we are going to be on next Monday. I'll be on vacation, but I will be in town Monday nights. We're going to keep it on the regular schedule, except we'll start at 8 Eastern, 7 Central next Monday. And then I'll be in Boston, Fenway Park, our annual mecca up there. So we'll see you guys next Monday night. Thanks for watching. Have a marvelous week, and God